weekend, talk a little bit about some of the key matches. So let's start with that first match on the screen. Brighton hosting Everton. Everton winning 1-0. Not a big surprise. Dominic Calvert-Lewin finds a way to go off injured. Usually happens right after someone in my household picks him up in their fantasy team, which is exactly what happened to Kelly's team. But I got to ask you, Paul. We have talked about how much we enjoy Brighton and love watching them play. Is there any side that underperforms more than Brighton? Because to be honest, where they stand in the table based on the talent they have, the coach they have, the players they have, makes me start to question, are Brighton one of the most underperforming sides in the entire Premier League in 2025?
I mean, I think you could certainly make that argument. They probably need to be looking, at what's going on from a managerial standpoint, because I think at some point when you take over a roster that has that sort of depth of young talent, like you have the pieces to figure it out. And there's enough pieces in that side to build around that have like experience between Matoma and, Welbeck and João Pedro and all that. I do think it's easy for us to sit here and look at this and say, well, this is, a bad result. And I do think, and although I do think it's a bad result, I do think we look at their last 4 matches, really. They drew with Arsenal and whipped off 3 straight wins. I just think they're wildly inconsistent. And that happens with young teams, but I think it shouldn't be happening as often as it's happening with Brighton. This is a bad result, but Everton's doing is keeping clean sheets. They're being tough to break down. And I think, Brighton, we're used to more of a swashbuckling side from them. And I don't know that they're going to score the way that they've typically been like a free scoring Brighton side right now. So I do agree that they're underperforming. I think we got to give Everton a little bit of credit here. I do think we have to acknowledge the fact that Brighton, although this may be a bad result, I think the big thing is just that they're not consistently taking points off teams they should. And that's what the good Brighton sides have been doing the last couple of years.
Well, speaking of free flowing and free scoring, Bournemouth 5, Forest 0. I picked Bournemouth to win this match. I think I've been high on Bournemouth all season long, especially the last few weeks. Never in a million years did I expect them to put up 5 against Forest, to be honest, especially to the none on the response. So I guess I'll ask you here, Paul, is this the first sign of maybe the wheels slightly coming off the Forest wagon? Or is this the first sign of the Premier League starting to see the actual wagon that Iriola and the folks in Bournemouth are building? Because the talent they have going forward, I would argue right now, they may have the most in-form attacking side in the entire Premier League. And this is Bournemouth.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue that either. I was shocked. I think everybody was shocked. I mean, you're looking at statistically the second best team in the Premier League in Forest before this match. So to see them shoot 5 out, I think it was disappointing for me. It was just the first time all year that I saw Forest just basically give up a match. And I think that says a lot for Bournemouth to basically put your pedal to the metal and floor it that way against the Forest side that's been tight defensively and pretty tough to break down. Not only did they do well offensively, I thought they did a really good job defending the counter early on, to the point where I think that's probably what left Forest to just sort of give up, is that fact that they just didn't see an opportunity on the counter either. And that's a real credit to Bournemouth.
So if we look at the last match of the weekend to talk about, obviously, I think it's probably the biggest match as far as sides we expect to be towards the top of the table, which was obviously Chelsea and City. City started 2 of their new boys in the 20-year-old central defender who had himself a nightmare of a match. We can talk a little bit more later in our stock up, stock down. I think I might have a little bit of City in that when we talk a little bit about these signings, etc. But what did you take out of that City match outside of the fact that really all Chelsea needs to make the next step forward is a new keeper?
Oh man, I thought the result was sort of indicative of where both of these sides are, right? I thought like um Chelsea looks like a side who's well frustrated with, like the fact that they kind of reached, at one point we were looking at them third on the table, right? And like they were looking good defensively, they were scoring goals, and then to see sort of the drop. I think we had talked sort of about a regression to the means, and it's almost like I think for them, they've got a little bit of Brighton on them, where they've dropped essentially points in four straight matches, and they go rip off 2 wins out of 3, and then they drop this one. I think this one probably confirms what we've all feared a little bit with City, is the fact that City is starting to feel a little bit more confident. They're starting to sort of find some defensive cohesiveness that's giving them something to build off of, even when they start a brand new transfer who probably hasn't seen much time with the rest of the side on the training pitch. But yeah, I think it says a lot about both teams. I think Chelsea's struggling to sort of regain some confidence, find that consistency and cohesiveness, and I think this is a City side that not only is starting to put it together, but feeling pretty good about what they've done in January from a transfer standpoint.
So City has started to figure it out, right? 4 wins and a draw in their last 5. They're up to fourth in the table and quickly within 6 points of Arsenal. If Arsenal don't find a way to, get that late winner, that would be even closer. They'd be 4 points within second, which really would have been a shocker, I think. Um, I agree with you. I think the players they've signed makes a lot of sense. I think they've done good business here. I think they had to do business. We'll talk a little bit more, I think, in our stock up, stock down. When you look here at this top half of the table now, we've touched on Chelsea. This is a really, really tight race, basically between Villa in eighth, all the way up to Forest in third, maybe even Arsenal in second. So, are you starting to give some credence to the fact that this Bournemouth side might be able to acquire enough points to stick around this top 5? Or do you think at the end of the day, maybe somebody fights their way in and Forest backs themselves out, but ultimately at this point it's Liverpool, Arsenal, City, Newcastle, and somebody else for the Champions League spots?
So I know how much you love Bournemouth and want them to be in this fight, and I could see them doing it. I mean, Chelsea certainly could help them out. I think the thing that is the biggest hurdle for Bournemouth right now um, really has to do with this Newcastle side, because I know they've got a loss here in their last 5, but if you take their performances versus City's performance over those last 5, I would take Newcastle's last 5 performances overall. I think they're firing, and I think they're playing really, really good. I think they have some stuff to build on. I think they're getting healthier. So I think Bournemouth is probably better than both of those sides when you look at their form over the last 5. But I think that, like, for Bournemouth to really get up there, they're going to have to find a way to get that. There's plenty of matches left. They're going to have to play as good or better than Newcastle over the duration of the season for that to happen.
Yeah, it's going to be a tight one. My biggest question is I'd argue that what I saw on Saturday afternoon is Bournemouth has a better chance of securing 4 more points out of the next 15 than Forest does. And I think that's where I come back to what I saw on, and to your point, even the quit in Forest, where like they they when times got tough, they kind of down tools.
Yeah.
And I know they're trying to buy players right now, and we all joke about it. Bournemouth is down 13 first team players, and they're securing results.
Yep.
If Forest lost Chris Wood for 3 weeks, I could see them in 11th by the end of it. And I think that's the difference. I think Bournemouth's showing you right now, without a recognized striker, they're able to score 5 goals against the second best defensive unit in the Premier League. And I think that, to me, is what's different with them, is that I think Iriola has created a world that, for them, they feel they can compete with anyone at any one moment. And I think it's that belief. And I think that's why I think, like, I don't believe it like I did with Leicester when they won the league, because eventually I was just like, you know what? These guys believe they can win this league. They're going to win this league. But I kind of feel like the Semenyos and the Kluiverts, I think they believe, the Dango Watara, like, I think they believe they belong in the Champions League. And I will give Kazi credit. He made a great point, and it was either the pre-match or the post-match show we did, where he said, the beauty of this is that you can convince these players they don't need more. So, like, if they can get into Champions League, they can look at a Kirkez and be like, why do you want to go to United for 60 million? You're playing in the Champions League here. And yeah, you might go to Liverpool, but you're probably going to be benched in the Champions League. Or you may not play every match, but at Bournemouth, you're starting every match. Hey, Semenyo, stay another year. Maybe the move is to Barcelona, not Chelsea, right? Like, I think you convince players that there's more time for you at this club and to buy into this project. And I think that's why it's so important. The sad part is, I don't think they're going to be able to convince the manager to stay. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that I think that should Pep leave City, or should Spurs move on, I think it will be hard for a guy like Iriola to turn down a bigger club if they come calling at a stadium that holds 15,000 people. And I hope I'm wrong, because it's really, really fun to watch. And we will get to, I'm sure, on our Monday night podcast, talking a lot about Bournemouth, knowing that Liverpool travels there next weekend. But let's look at the bottom of the table here quickly. Obviously, we look down at that bottom section: Southampton, Ipswich, Wolves, and Leicester. Back-to-back wins for David Moyes and Everton, getting them within a point of Spurs. So, before we talk about the bottom, Paul, from what you've seen with Everton in these last couple matches and the bounce they've gotten from David Moyes, and what we know of Leicester, Wolves, Ipswich, and Southampton, do you think Everton has started to slightly separate themselves from this bottom half, and couple more results and they'll probably find themselves to safety pretty quick? And are we basically talking 3 out of 4 right now from 17 to 20?
I think it's too early to call it for Everton. My hunch is that they've probably got enough with the new manager to bump them up and be safe again this year. This is feeling like deja vu all over again. When we kind of look down these matches, the next one's a big one. On Saturday they play Leicester. You know what I mean? That's a 6-pointer. So I think obviously that's going to be the big one. Wolves can score goals. They also concede them at an hourly rate. So like I think it's really going to come down to, can Everton get 3 points versus the 4 below, right? Like, I think that's what this is going to come down to.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. My bigger fear with Wolves is there's more and more talk that Cunha is really, really forcing his way out, and that he'll probably get his move by the end of the month. Most